You are listening to Insights with Kathleen. Please join me while I share my insights and experiences with the hope to inspire you to look inside of yourself for the answers that you already have. As with all information we receive, take what speaks to you and leave the rest.
And
rolling.
And we're rolling.
Hello, guys.
Well, hi, Cher.
well, hey, Kathleen, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
I'm good. I'm eagerly awaiting your topic.
Oh, yeah. So I have Sherry on. Welcome back, everybody. And I have Sherry on.
Welcome back, guys. Anyway.
I've been playing with Sherry a little bit, and we were starting to talk. And so last week, when we finished up and we were getting ready to post the third episode for season 2.
Yes.
Sherry and I were just chatting about some other things, and I'm like, I already have the topic for next week. And she's like, really great. And then I spewed it out, and Sherry's like, that would be good. So then today we're just kind of connecting, and I'm like, hey, Cher, what are we talking about? And she looked at me and she made a face because you remember last week we said that now it's mostly on me now to come up with the topics. So she's making a face at me like, what do you mean?
We're tag teaming, but like I love your topics you've been presenting. So I'm like, let's go off, sis. Let's do it.
So she's reminding me that don't you remember last week you came up with the topic for this week? And so she's trying to refresh my memory, and she goes, well, what was it? And I'm like, well, you wrote it down. She goes, no, I didn't. So anyway, I'm just telling a little bit of a story because I want to drag it out a little bit longer because you should see Sherry's face right now. She's like, will you just get to it?
Here's the thing, okay? No, I want to point out, guys. So, yeah, she's like, what were we talking about? I was like, yeah, you did say it last week, and then we got the book. And I'm like, what was it? And you started reading it, and then you're like, you know what? Never mind. And then she just put it on record, and I was like, well, I guess we're doing it now.
All right. So if you did listen to our episode 3, or even if you didn't, we'll do a quick little refresh. So in episode 3, we really went more into talking about perspectives.
Yes.
And we did go more into how we can work on leveraging our strengths, right? Instead of focusing on our weaknesses.
Right.
And where we're weak, maybe we can find someone else who's actually strong in what we're weak in.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then we can have a collaboration.
Which is cool.
Which is way cool.
Yeah.
Which then brings us to today.
And
collaboration.
That's the jingle going in. We should just make it that. I love that. Yes.
So we wanted to share a little bit more about the journey that Cherry and I are on.
Wicked journey, man.
We're not going to say we're on because we're still on it.
Right.
And I think that this is a journey that will continue for quite some time.
That's nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that's nice for everybody else because I'm having fun. I don't care.
I'm having a ball. So.
All right. But so when Sherry and I do the podcast and we come up with topics, we're really not doing that alone either.
No, we're not.
Right? So what part of our process, so we're just going to give you a picture into what we do.
Right.
So part of our process is before we start hitting the record button, we center ourselves. We come in, we let go of whatever else has happened in the day. We let go of our laundry list of things to do.
Right.
We even let go of the dog if the dog's going to be crazy and barking while we're recording. We just kind of let it all go and we center. We take some big, deep breaths. We do a little tiny meditation. And then we ask our bigger team to come in to help us.
Now, you said bigger team. What exactly does that entail?
Well, you would almost think that this was like a written script or something. You really perform right on par. Thank you. Thanks for collaborating
several
with
years
me.
ago. Yeah, once. Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. So part of what we've been doing is growing our spiritual life. Right?
Yeah.
With everything that's going on in the world and, just the different messaging that's out there and the way different people are behaving and acting and just the unknown, right?
Right.
It kind of can shake a person.
Mm-hmm.
Not saying that we were shook because I think that we were in a pretty good space anyway, right? But having a spirit team, because that's what we're really talking about, is the bigger team at large is our spirit team.
Right.
So, having a belief system to lean on.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And in having a belief system to lean on, then it gives us a little more confidence in what we're doing.
Right.
It helps us as human beings to feel safe.
Yeah.
And we're in uncertainty.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
For sure.
In chaos. Like finding the calm in the chaos.
Right. That type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me as I choke on my own saliva here. So when we start these podcasts, we're centering ourselves. We're calling in the team. And how do you do that? Well, you have to take a few deep breaths and you have to quiet. You have to quiet the stories in your head, and you have to, surrender to some extent, right?
Right.
And trust that there's something more than what meets your eye, or something more than what we think is there.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And then when we can trust that there's something bigger.
Yeah.
Right? There's something bigger at work here.
Yes. Yeah.
Then my life doesn't seem so tragic.
Right. Right. Of course. And I love you sharing about just, how we get our, the podcast and how we get the ideas and stuff or topics for the show. And kind of like with me, I would love to ask, how did you get into spirituality? I don't know if you just woke up and you're like, I know I have a spirit. How did you get from that point to now, if that makes sense?
I love that question. Thank you for asking it.
Of course.
Because people who have met me, even just an acquaintance who've met me, or people at work,
right?
They can see I live and breathe spirituality.
You do, yeah.
And no one's really asked.
Really? I brought the topic.
They just take it and receive it. And
right.
Which, first of all, I totally appreciate that they give me that, and they have that level of mutual respect.
Right. That's good.
So really, it's going to sound so weird, but I really believe I was born with it turned on. But I think what really fostered it for me, Sherry, is that, trauma. Right? So growing up, my parents did really the best that they could. And,
right.
And I really do have to write a book about this, because it really is a good book.
There we go. Idea number 6.
So both of my parents came from very abusive situations as children. My mom's parents, oh my goodness, I won't get into all the details, but just suffice to know that it was bad.
Oh.
Back when they were kids, they didn't have they didn't have diapers. They didn't have, those agencies that cared for children.
Right.
Children who are being abused. I mean, because if they did, their parents probably would have had the electric chair for as horrible as they were with their children. Right.
Yeah.
So here's my parents coming together as a couple, loving one another, wanting to build their own family. They had a sense of determination that they were not going to be like their parents.
Right.
And my dad's father was an alcoholic and used to beat my dad.
Wow.
The one story I've shared with you before, right, is that his mom and dad would get into these physical fights.
Oh, wow.
And my dad's father was really not only just tall, over 6 feet tall, but he was burly.
That's kind of intimidating.
He was beefy.
Yeah.
And then his mom was probably about 5'6", petite.
Oh.
And so you think about
that's a
physical altercations, right?
Well,
the one day she picked up, I think it was either a frying pan. No, it was a sugar bowl. She threw a sugar bowl and nailed him in the head with it and knocked him out. She thought she'd killed him.
Oh, wow.
So imagine growing up in that environment,
yeah,
right?
That's
and then the mother leaving because
yeah.
of these altercations, but then leaving him with the old man.
Right.
So he brings that trauma with him.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's entering this marital state with somebody else who's bringing trauma with her.
Right.
So my mom was sexually abused by her father.
Oh.
Yeah, that was ugly. And there's a lot more ugly that goes with that.
Right.
But now she's bringing that into this reunion,
yeah,
right?
this relationship.
So now they're making this family. So my dad was really really determined he was never going to drink alcohol because he never wanted to be like his father.
Right.
And there was a lot of things that they kind of brushed under the rug and just said, hey, yeah, you know what? We're okay. We're good, viable people.
Right.
And,
We're like, just do it.
So I'm just kind of setting the premise, right? So now I come in, I'm born into this family.
Mm-hmm.
I am a very sensitive
Oh.
person. So to hear the stories from my dad and my mom, oh my goodness, Kathleen, you was always crying. You're always crying. And then this one friend would come over to visit, and I was probably like 2, right? And then playpen, and the guy would bend down and look at me. I would just bawl and scream, and so it was like he was the boogeyman or something. Yeah. So, you know, and you fast forward. My dad always had a very authoritarian, disciplinary, way of him.
Disciplining, yeah.
Yeah, and my mom was more of that passive.
Okay.
You know, she tried, right? Because it was just kind of like that whole dynamic,
right.
which then over the years grew into a whole big passive aggressive kind of relationship between the two of them, or codependent, kind of a codependent thing too. But somewhere along the lines, my parents actually taught me a lot of valuable things. And then somewhere along the line, my dad, trying to mend fences with his own father, had opened up the home to him to come in.
Right. Okay.
His father sexually abused me.
Oh.
Yeah. So, you know, and when you go through that, you're kind of like,
you're like, what do I do?
Where's my self-worth?
Right. Yeah.
I have no self-worth. I have no self-esteem. I don't feel safe.
Right. That,
you know, everything's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then there's shame because now you're being told it's your fault.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
8 years old and it's my fault, right?
Gosh.
You know, so that to me was kind of like spirituality was my survival kit.
Right.
For that.
Wow.
Right. And then not just that, but it's also for like just my own upbringing.
Right.
Right. Because my dad being this authoritarian parent, I wasn't allowed to have emotions because I was so sensitive. He can just look at me funny and I start crying. You know, mom's making the meal I really absolutely hate to eat, and I could see that she's preparing it before I leave the school. And I'm crying all the way to school. And I'm crying all the way home because back then. You had to eat what was placed in front of you.
Oh, okay.
There was no going to bed hungry. You ate what was on your plate, and you sat at that table until you ate it.
Sucks.
So can you imagine the level of torture?
Right.
So forget the sexual abuse part. Let's just talk about the food part.
That was also awful to eat. Jeez.
Right. So, and God bless my mom. She converted to Catholicism for my dad.
Wow. Okay.
And my dad never attended church.
Oh,
which is more interesting. But my mom would haul us all to CCD and to church every Sunday, and you know, so it's kind of my first exposure to it, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So my first exposure to spirituality, and knowing intuitively,
right,
there is something more. There's something more, and I apologize. My dog is over here wanting to play.
She's also excited.
And so seeing that and knowing just intuitively there was something more. Like when my sister and I were younger, we would hear my parents fighting through the walls.
Oh, wow.
And what we would hear mostly is my dad berating my mom. Excuse me. My sister and I were like, Mom, like we're cheering for her, like, just stand up to him.
Right.
Just
step in your power.
Yeah. Like so as young kids, and this was happening before I was abused, but as young kids, we even knew then that wasn't right.
Yeah.
Right. So that was our innate knowing.
Right. I like that you used that word.
Thank you. And then I realized too that as I was growing up, that I would have certain dreams, and they would be prophetic dreams, like dreams of events that would happen.
Okay.
You didn't know that, did
I
you?
did not know that.
Yes, that's because I never really shared that with Cherry much.
That's really cool though.
Yeah, and they tend they weren't all the time. They would just
Right.
tend to come when there was going to be a life-changing moment for me.
Wow. Okay.
So from there, the whole search from the trauma and things like that, the
Right.
whole search for more meaning, looking for power, really.
Right.
I think it really just was stemming because like I felt so powerless,
and that's fair.
right?
Yeah.
Because when you're locked up in these situations and you have these adults that are doing things to you,
Right. Yeah.
you know, or adults that are orchestrating your life for you,
Right. Yeah.
you're looking for something to
Yes.
fight your way out of it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I guess innately that's who I am. I am a fighter, man.
She
You know,
is, guys.
and based on you know this trek of experience in my young youth, do
Right.
not back me in a corner because man, I'm going to come out fighting,
Yes, she will.
and and I take no prisoners.
She doesn't, guys. Don't let that voice fool you.
But so that was really the beginning of it, and I do appreciate you listening to that whole baseline.
I like hearing it.
Thank you. You know, and I took the trek, Cherry. I took the trek of going through. So, like I said, we started with Catholicism.
Right.
At that time, when I was really young, I just felt it was impersonal.
Can you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
So, with Catholicism, when you go into church, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of people make fun of it. Oh, you sit, you stand, you kneel. You sit, you stand, you kneel. You sit, you
I
stand, you
noticed
kneel.
that. Yeah.
You know, and really, what I didn't know then, but I can appreciate more now, it's more about a ceremony, right? It's about celebrating something, and then maybe, you know, the pastor or the priest or whomever is giving, you know, serving the mass,
Right.
you know, who's leading this, will then have a few words to say either about the gospel message of that day, or just a few words. Hopefully they're in touch with their congregation and know what they need to hear in the moment. You know what I mean? So they'll say a few words, and then you're going back to just celebrating, and that's really what it is. It's about a celebration, and it's and it is a repeat, right? The whole process is a repeat. Some of the music changes, and then certain readings may change,
right?
You know, but it is the nice thing about it. It's consistent.
That's fair.
Right? And people who need to feel safe
Yes.
need consistency.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
Okay. But I always felt that it wasn't real personable.
Okay.
Because we're going through a routine.
Right.
But everyone seemed to be locked in themselves and not always so open to want to embrace others.
Right. That makes sense.
Right? Like, all right, we've done our duty.
We can
We're
all
here.
leave.
We did this. Okay, goodbye.
Goodbye. Just leave.
Yep. And not even goodbye. They're just like, all right. He said, he excused us. We're all done. We can go now.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And again, this is my perspective as a kid.
Right.
Perspective.
Another point. I'm going to dock you $1 every time you say it.
So, but yearning for this connection, yearning for love.
Right.
Really, that's really what it all comes down to, because of going through these experiences, I'm not feeling connected.
Right.
I'm feeling disconnected. I'm not feeling love.
Right.
I'm not feeling loved.
Yeah.
You know, regardless, it doesn't matter how many people around me tell me I am loved or that they love me. I'm really just not feeling it.
Oh.
Of course, it takes me forever to figure it out. It's because I have to love me.
There it is.
Right? So, a youth group, even a youth group through the Catholic Church, right?
Right.
There just wasn't, it was forced. It wasn't
It did feel,
yeah, it was forced. And it wasn't like they were really trying to connect.
Right.
Because they didn't know how to really connect to the heart.
Right.
So by the time I got to high school, I had met some people, and they introduced me to their youth group, which is a different religion altogether. And it was warm, and there was this connection, and people saw me.
Oh.
So then that helped develop my spirituality even more.
Yeah.
You know, and then from there it just kept growing, and I just knew that I'll try and keep it short instead of really long, because I could spend all day talking about this. Excuse me. I I just always had this inner knowing.
Right.
And it's about honoring my inner knowing.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we can have all of these great organized religions,
Mm-hmm.
but none of them really fully spoke to me.
Yeah.
You know, there's pieces that I can say, okay, I get that. Like,
Right.
what I loved about the Catholic Church is the ceremony.
Yeah.
Right? I did love that I knew this was coming and this was coming and this was happening. So it helped me get into a meditative state.
Ooh, that's a good. Okay, I'm gonna dock myself perspective because I did not think of that actually, because I think I went to a funeral and it was like more of like a Catholic type thing, and I was like, why are we kneeling? It's like, this is so strange. But you know, putting it in a meditative state, it was kind of like
It had a flow.
It did have a really nice flow.
Right. And what I had learned as a parent, right? Because to make the best of it, right? I learned that getting into that meditative state,
right,
and going into, so I basically learned how to meditate there. Not that the church teaches you that
right,
that's what's happening, because they have a different perspective on that.
$5.
You're gonna be rich.
I am soon.
So, but it was how I.
Right, that was your takeaway with it.
This word wants to come out, so I'm just gonna say that's how I survived it.
That's fair.
Okay. It's following your inner knowing of knowing that when I honor that,
right,
then that's stepping more into who I am.
Ooh, I like
right?
that.
And that's stepping more into my power. So taking this whole spiritual journey helped me to connect to me. And that's really what it's about.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. We cannot, no, let me back up. No two people will have the same journey.
That's true.
It doesn't matter if you go to church. It doesn't matter if you don't go to church. It doesn't matter what you believe in.
Right.
No one will have the same journey because it's very personal. Wow. Very personal. And everybody has, and I'm sorry to say it again, but everybody has their own take on it. Ha ha, tricked you.
You tease.
So when going through the trauma and the abuse that I experienced, right, I had noticed that I was disconnected. And I was blessed. The universe had truly blessed me with earth angels, with friends who were earth angels to me, to people who make connections for me, for TV shows even, like I just would happen to capture.
That's nice.
Yeah, so I'm going to continue to go back a little bit on that. The story is I never told anybody about the abuse that my grandfather put upon me.
Wow.
It wasn't until I was dating my very first boyfriend that I shared. He was the very first person I ever shared that information. So,
wow.
And I was a junior in high school at that time. And I'm carrying all of that for all those years, right? And I was afraid. I couldn't sleep with the lights out. I had to have the lights on. And when I shared this with him, we both just cried. We cried. He cried with me. He held me and we cried. And there was a level of healing there.
I can imagine, yeah.
Right? Now, mind you, this relationship with this first boyfriend was the most unhealthy relationship ever.
She's like, just a caveat, just so you're listening, that was unhealthy. That's just something I needed at that time, and so did he.
Right. And we were together for quite some, well, for teenagers, that was quite a long time, for at least a year, right? And but there were lovely things that came from that. There was lovely healing. There was a level of strength. There was a level of manipulation on his part, which just opened my eyes to other things. You know, like I had shut my emotions off.
Is that what you meant by the disconnected piece?
Yes. So the disconnection is that because not just the abuse from my grandfather, but just the way that my father and mother raised us. Right. Right. Because my dad was so uncomfortable with me crying. Right. Like, I don't hold any of this against them. I understand a lot of it now. It was just because he didn't know what to do with me when I would lose myself into tears because everything hurt my feelings. And it wasn't that like my feelings were just necessarily always hurt. It was just I was so sensitive
Right.
that crying was just an emotion to release or to help me cope
Right.
with the stimuli that was surrounding me.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I want to say that again because for any parents who are listening who have children who are that sensitive,
Right.
just know that their hearts are open to receiving from the universe, and they can see and feel a lot of things that are happening around them, and sometimes they may not have the tools
Right.
to manage that. So affirming, first of all, that hey, there's nothing wrong with what you're feeling.
That's nice.
Right? Doesn't that feel good? It's like a hug.
It does,
It's like a
because
nice warm
it
blanket.
makes it feel as if it's not like, oh, I'm doing something wrong or this is
Right.
bad.
Or I'm wrong
Yeah.
or I'm broken.
Yeah.
Because you're not.
Right.
You're not. They're not.
Yeah.
It's the world could be overwhelming
It
to
can.
sensitives because that's what you're called. A child who is that sensitive to those things around them,
Right.
they're not just autistic because not all of them are autistic.
Right. Yeah.
Because we know of autism that autistic children and people, they need a quiet space.
Right.
They need to make sure that there's nothing to really startle them.
Right. Right.
But sensitives
Yeah.
and sensitive children, it's not that they have a developmental issue.
Right.
It's just the world is overwhelming
Right.
and they're not quite sure how to manage it.
Yeah.
And if as parents and adults, if we can see it from that lens,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't say the word, but if we can see it from that lens, then I think that we're better in a better place to assist.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right? So again, my parents, I'm able to see, through my journey, because at one point I was helping my mom through her journey, right?
Wow,
So as I
full
can see
circle.
through our journey that, they themselves were still disconnected from their own
Right.
emotions. They were still disconnected from pieces of their soul because of their experiences, right?
Right.
And you notice that I'm saying experiences.
Yeah.
And it's something, it's not something that necessarily happened to me as much as an experience that I had.
Right.
And it feels different when I'm
It
able
does
to say
feel
it that
different
way.
when you switch the lens because,
Yeah.
I would use the like something happened to me and then I feel like super unempowered.
You feel like a victim.
Yeah, I
Right?
do.
So, and I'm going to say that again for anyone who is listening,
Right.
who's had these traumas, who have had things happen to them.
Yeah.
Listen again. If you were sexually abused, if you were raped, if you were beaten, if you were abused in any way, please know it's an experience you had.
Right.
You do not need to remain a victim by remembering and switching. That's an experience I had.
And not defined by that either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's an empowering thing.
It is.
And so my mom, I didn't tell my mom about what my grandfather had done
Mm-hmm.
until I think it was in my early 20s. And he was coming to
Wow.
visit. And it was the only reason why I told her, because we had this deal. I got these really beautiful Priscilla curtains for my bedroom.
Ooh.
And my mom was very frugal and did not want to spend, extra money on frills.
Right.
She's not a frill seeker.
Okay. All right.
But I really wanted them. And I said, well, we could use my bedroom as the guest room for whenever somebody came.
Nice.
And I
Okay.
could bunk in with my sister
Nice.
or in the basement. So she agreed. And now he's coming to visit, which meant I had to vacate my bedroom
Oh.
for him to come.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't want it.
That's
And-
there.
And all my life, I have been very obedient,
Mm-hmm.
very passive. Like if they said, you're doing this, I was like, okay, I have to do this because of the trauma that happened to me. I always had to make sure that I was in the right. I always had to not in the right, like I'm always right,
Right.
but more in that I had to make sure I was following all the rules.
Right,
I
yeah.
was not, going to be
Be out of
wrong
line.
or
Right.
pointed out that I was a bad girl.
Mhm. Yeah.
So for me to push back on her on this and say, I don't want him there, and then to really press very, very hard, she demanded an explanation.
Oh.
So then I gave it to her. Then she screamed at me.
Oh. Oh no.
She did. So we're sitting in a car. I remember we're sitting in a car.
Yeah.
At this shopping center, which doesn't exist anymore, but we're sitting. I'm telling you, I remember it was really, impressionable. So it imprinted. Yeah. So we're sitting in the car. I tell her, she's screaming at me, and she's in the passenger seat. I'm in the driver's seat, and she said, "Why didn't you ever tell me that? Blah, 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 blah. I made sure that my girls this would never happen to my girls because this happened to me, and I was refusing to blah, 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 blah. What? And then she's yelling, and I mean, like mad
that
yelling.
Would scare me.
Exactly.
That's scary.
Exactly. So I just calmly looked at her, in a very calm, low voice, I said, because I was not ready for this reaction that you're giving me.
That was a good yeah.
It was like a slap across her face.
Yeah.
Right? So she stopped talking like mid-sentence because I was calm and just in a very low voice. I just matter-of-factly stated it. It wasn't a judgment or anything. It was. And then, she apologized all over the place. And it was the beginning of our journey together towards healing.
Oh, that's good.
It really was, because she's never really addressed her own. She's just kind of chin up, shoulders back, suck it in and just continue on with life. Yeah, that happened, but we're just going to pretend like it didn't happen, and we're going to continue on.
Yeah.
You can't pretend it didn't happen, because
of course, that's
much like I've said to her, is it permeates all aspects of your life.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
So until you can become whole and recognize and do those self-inventories, that will. So this is why I really leaned on spirituality.
That makes sense.
So I don't know if anybody out there, and I know you don't, have watched.
How do you know? How do you know?
You and I have had this conversation. Watched Star Trek.
I have not watched that.
Yes, he told you.
Yeah.
So when Star Trek, the Next Generation came out.
Okay.
I really was into it. Mm-hmm. Really, really into it.
Really into it.
You
really
were
a Trekkie.
Like, I was a Trekkie, like a sideline secretive Trekkie. And mainly, the character I mainly identified with,
William Shatner.
Oh, heck no. He wasn't even in Next Generation.
Oh, sorry.
He was First Generation.
Oh.
Was the character of Data.
Is that?
Data is the android in Next Generation, for those of you who don't know the show much like Cherry, so we're going to dummy it down. So he's the android, and the premise of most of what you find throughout the whole series is that Data is working really hard to be more human.
All
right. So he was programmed without emotions, but he's trying to relate, and he's studying human nature to be more like them.
Oh.
So Data is the one I'm most identified with, but Deanna Troi is who I wanted to be.
Who is that?
Deanna Troi was the sexy Betazoid.
And she was not a robot.
But you see, so Data represented my humanity. And Diana Troi represented my spirituality.
Ah, that makes sense.
So it was kind of cool that my spirit team was helping me to figure this out through a TV show.
Star Trek, of all the places.
I'm trekking it, man.
I love that, though. I love that you were able to get that from, like, Star Trek as well, because I also had that struggle within myself of, like, I don't know, going through my own stuff, and I'm like, well, I want to be more confident. I want to be more of this, and I would always be attracted to, like, other people that, like, have that brute and confidence and all that stuff, and you're like, yeah, man, because you have that within you, and I was like, what? And you blew my mind off that day.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me. So I mean, we could spend hours in going through all the different experiences and all the different nuances, because there were a lot of cool things that had happened.
Right.
But I think that the biggest key for me in my spiritual journey and how getting into spirituality was noticing things and daring to accept the magic that's out there.
Oh, there's so much of it out there.
You know, people will kind of dismiss different things. Like for me, like if a bird shows up at a specific time at a specific thought, to me, that was spirituality. You know, it was like, hey, the team is talking to me. And, you know, and you got to feel that out. And like, I'm being a little silly, but but you know what I'm saying. Clouds were a big thing for me.
Really?
Yeah, and it's funny because even in Star Trek, they'll say, "Oh, look at the clouds." Well, the clouds are just this, and they'll break down the chemical components of a cloud and why a cloud is a cloud, and why do people always have to see faces and things in the clouds? Well, that's part of using our imagination. Spirituality is about imagination.
I like that.
Yeah, so they kind of go hand in hand. Like there is a reason. There's more of a reason for your imagination than just having an imagination and playing pretend.
Right.
Right? It's a way to connect. And to not judge that. Right? So and then that opens you up to collaborate with all that is.
Ooh, that's
So
nice.
So another fun story for you.
Yes.
And I'm sorry because it's like the Kathleen show or something.
Insights with Kathleen every Wednesday. Check it out.
All right. So those are kind of my early years, right? And a lot of things have happened in between, and I'm just, it would just take way too long to even.
That's the
Hit all the-
exclusive peek. Part 5.
In collaborating with our spirit team, we need to
Right.
put our order in.
Oh, I always loved when you would say it like that, because I always think of it in the prayer sense, and you're kind of begging for something and hoping breadcrumbs show up. And I kind of mean it in the sense of like, because I grew up, as a Christian and going to church. Because for you, when you would tell me about putting your order in, you're like, just, how you want it. And every time I would go to church, before I met you, it's like, okay, just like kind of beg and like don't ask for too much, like that's not Christian, and like that's the experience I would have at church. And then I'd met you and you're like, put the order in, and stuff would come through, and it was so different.
Yes. So, and to build on that was mainly my big driver. So here I am going to these different Christian-based churches, right? Excuse me. And to me, they were wanting.
Right.
So the thing that always struck me as we would read the Bible, and or even in church, we always hear that we are sons and daughters of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So if we're sons and daughters of God and brothers and sisters of Jesus Christ, right? I am going to say it. I'm going to say it. You ready? You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on, everybody. So here we go. So if we're sons and daughters of God,
Yeah.
then why are we being called to be less than?
Oh.
Yeah, I said it a little differently.
Yeah.
Sherry was afraid because I would say to Sherry, if we're sons and daughters of God, then we're God. We're not the God, but we're God, right?
I love that.
That's the part she was like, but
And then she said, anyway, hi,
I
tricked
did.
you.
You're welcome. She wanted me to say it.
I did.
So I was collaborating with her.
She was.
But to me, coming back to what you were saying about asking for prayer, right?
Right.
So when we pray in that manner, we're victimizing ourselves.
We are.
We're disempowering ourselves,
Yes.
right? But if we're sons and daughters of God, then why can't we create like God does?
Ooh.
Now, mind you, I'm not going to go out and try and create a big planet, but but we're each creators
Right.
in and of ourselves,
Right.
right? So let's just say, okay, I love this one. This is a good story to tell.
All right.
Okay. So here I am in a house. I have 2 young kids, divorced a couple of years now, but the
Right.
kids are still really little. The house has sort of fallen down around us
Mm-hmm.
because the house was purchased as a fixer-upper. The plan was we were gonna fix the house up, live in it for 5 years, sell it, and move on to something else.
Oh.
That was the general plan. Okay. Well, then life happens, and life comes in and says, "Oh no! You know what? Your husband has decided this journey for his soul experience, and he's just gonna fall on his face and hurt his knee, and and now he's not working anymore." And you're like, "What?"
Oh,
And you're like, okay, well, we're going to try and work through this because we're troopers, and trying to push him along. And he's like, no, I'm deciding, I'm practicing free will. I don't want to do any of that. Okay, well, because you're practicing free will, now you're forcing a hand for this other decision, right? It's a short story. It's overview. Nobody's good or bad, or it just is.
Yeah.
So, but now we're in this situation where I don't have a large income at this point in time.
Right.
my son has allergies. You know, I have allergies. So central air would be really nice.
Right.
Instead of having to open up the windows and blow fans and pollen in the house.
Right. Yeah.
The countertop at the time was crumbling. Like it was this like Formica stuff, and it was so old.
Oh,
like it had to have been 20 years old.
Oh, no.
You know, and I'm trying to wipe underneath it because you got little kids. They're walking around touching stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to wipe underneath it, and it's crumbling in my hands. And I would joke that I had a ghetto house because I had a screen door that just wouldn't close.
Oh, no.
It just kind of would flap in the wind.
And you're just like, all right. Okay.
And then these unruly hedges in the front yard. And yeah, so I just stood in my kitchen one day and I just said, all right, guys, being my spirit team, all right, guys, it's up to you. You said you would always provide. We'll start providing. This is what I need. And I listed it. I listed,
new kitchen, especially.
I listed that I needed new siding. I needed a new roof. I needed a new door. I would like to have central air. Right. So,
Yeah.
so I listed it out.
Right.
And I said, all right, we'll take care of it. And that was kind of what I said.
Nice.
Now, mind you, at the time, I was participating in the Catholic Church, and I was going. It wasn't quite as far along in my spiritual journey as I am today.
Right.
Okay. Placed my order, forgot about it. Just like, hey, take care of it. I'm done. I didn't lament on it. I didn't over focus on it. I didn't like sweat it out. I just figured, it's all going to work out somehow.
Right.
And that's what I did. So Sherry.
So Kathleen.
Do you know that Hurricane Sandy?
I've heard of that Hurricane
that
Sandy.
No.
She smiles saying it makes sense, I promise, guys. Remember that hurricane? I remember that hurricane.
My order was filled.
How so, you say?
Well, you know, all of our electric went out.
Oh, no.
We're sitting in the dark in the front room, and we're by candlelight. We're making little snowflakes to celebrate my daughter's birthday because she had a specific theme she wanted for her birthday.
Nice.
Okay. So we're making that happen. We had a big dog, and it was in the room with us. So all of us are in the front room. The wind is howling, and it was scary.
Oh.
It was very scary. I will not kid you. It was scary.
Yeah.
We hear some crunching. We're like, what was that?
Oh, no.
We walk down the hallway. We see some leaves coming out of the roof.
That's not
the
good.
ceiling. We see leaves like where my hall light's supposed to be. There's a branch with leaves.
Oh, my God. What?
We had a tree house, Sherry.
And the tree decided to be part of the house.
Yeah. Well, you know, to back that story up a little bit more, a couple of days beforehand, like we hear that this hurricane's coming, right?
Right.
And I'm being pressed. I'm being like this pressing is happening inside of me that do all your laundry, fill up these jugs of water, get some batteries for a radio, and flashlights. Like I never do any of this stuff for any storm,
right?
Even though that the weather people suggest it and the news suggest it and everybody suggests you should have this going on, right? I'm like, yeah, no, yeah, no. So I'm doing a laundry, and as I'm finishing the last load of laundry, I'm feeling like you got to pack a bag. Oh, no. Before that, it was like, get your important papers box, pull it out of your back closet and put it here. Okay. So I did it. I don't know why. I just did it.
Right.
But then it was a push to pack a suitcase, and I resisted. I resisted that one. I'm like, I can't do that. These kids think I'm going crazy as it is. You know?
They're going to be like, what's going on with
I'm
Mom?
really going to give them a panic attack.
Oh, no.
So now the tree's down in my house, the tree that was in my front yard. And I knew.
And it's a big tree.
It is a big oak tree.
It was a big oak tree
that's over 50 years old. So you can imagine, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't even wrap your arms around it.
No, because it's so big.
So I knew as soon as I saw that branch in my ceiling, this was the answer to me throwing it up to the team.
Wow.
Well, provide.
Oh, my God.
Make it happen. And what to affirm it is my neighbor across the street was already at my door with the flashlight before we came back from the hallway.
Oh, my gosh.
And he had the fire marshal with him.
Oh, that's good.
The other blessing, too, is that the electric was out before the tree fell.
Yeah, because it would have caught on fire.
And we would have had a house fire because they found out later it severed an electrical line.
Oh, my gosh.
So now, I love that story because, you know, everything was provided for me.
Right.
Even the contractor was provided to me. And they did a fabulous job, you know, and we live in this beautiful new home.
It looks nice, y'all.
Thank you.
They got glass stovetop.
We reconfigured it.
Mm-hmm.
So since we had to knock the whole thing down anyway, because everything was compromised.
Right.
We knocked everything down, but what was considered the new edition. So the whole original old edition had been knocked down and cleared out. And so I took the opportunity to upgrade to electric from oil, so I don't have to burn that. Right.
Yeah.
And reconfigured the kitchen. So it's warm and welcoming, and
it is really nice.
It's a beautiful. I had the central air.
Yeah.
I got the new siding.
Wow.
I got the new roof. And as you already heard, we got the new kitchen. So, and I was so very grateful, and I continue to be grateful for that.
Right.
So that comes back to collaborating with your team.
That's smart. And I love when you were saying about like putting the order in, and you said like, this is the stuff that I'd like. Thank you. And because so much for me would be like, okay, if I have to fast about it, I have to obsess over it, I have to find a way to make it work. God helps those who help themselves, like all these different things. But you kind of been teaching me like, no, just even like, with internships and stuff and just different opportunities, I'd be like, I'm sweating. What am I to do? And you're like, just throw it out there, what you want, and just let it go. And a lot of this stuff would come back to me, which is like such a novel idea.
Yeah, so you're putting the order in, you're letting go, you're not lamenting over it, you're going on with life, you're
right.
looking. So this is where the imagination also comes in handy too, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that before. It's about being open to what's coming your way.
Yes, letting the abundance flow.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes before people could even get there to allow it to happen, they need to be more in touch with themselves.
Right.
And then as we get more in touch with ourselves and more connected to our own emotions, then we're better able to discern different things. And these are topics and conversations we'll pull apart, and we'll get a little more into it, like how do you do that, and how do you get along that way, and what's this and what's that, and what do you mean, why, but kind of like also to what Sherry's bringing up here, for anybody who wants to go a little deeper into this, because this is talking about tapping into your own abundance, right?
Right.
And it's about also setting your dial to the right channel to attract the abundance.
Oh.
So anybody who's really interested in breaking down and really learning about that, go to Esther Hicks, or you can also, Google Esther Hicks and Abraham, or I forget how it goes, but she goes into it more, and she does channeling. Abraham is her guide's name that comes in.
Okay.
And her spirit team will come in and she channels, and it's usually Abraham that's talking through Esther.
Right.
It's nothing to be scary about, people. It's just really about, she likes to put a name to it. We all do it at some point. We just don't always understand that we're doing it.
That's true. Yeah.
But they go in and they talk about, she uses the term vortex, and it's about how you where you set your mind and your thoughts,
right?
Which then it, affects your vibrations, and then that also affects what you're attracting into your life. We've said it in different ways, but that she gets really into the depths
that
of
topic, though. Like, whatever you put out is what you're attracting. I feel like that could just be an episode in and of itself,
and it may be.
Yes, guys, I got another topic out of her.
Well, Sherry, we talked on for quite some time today, and I think we gotta give our poor little listeners a break.
Thanks for listening, guys. Also, those names that Kathleen mentioned, we'll have in
our notes.
Yeah, we'll have in the summary of this episode.
Yes, and thanks again. Have a good night.
Thank you for tuning in. Remember that you are bigger than anything that you are going through or anything that is happening around you.